MPLS. Let's begin. Here are the opt-out questions for this video, and here's how they work. They're great. We take just a moment, we read through these questions, and if we already know the answers and are comfortable with those topics, we can go ahead and jump right to the next video and maximize our time. Now, if you're not quite yet comfortable with these concepts, have no fear, because you and I are going to cover each of these topics right now. I'd like you to imagine that you and I together are going to build a service provider network. And don't worry, we'll start small. For example, maybe we have just 3 routers, R1, R2, and R3. And we've got some basic connectivity between them, and that makes up our service provider network. Now, I've got a question for you. What does a service provider really need to be successful in business? And one of the answers is we need at least one customer, a paying customer, who's buying our services. So let's say we have customer A. They have site 1, and we have customer A at site 2. /12, which is the RFC 1918 private address space. They're welcome to use that. And let's say over at site 2, they're using 192.168.0.0/16, and anything that falls within that range. Now, as a service provider for this customer, customer A, we need to provide some services, including routing services. So from an education or a learning perspective, routing could imply that we need to make sure that all the devices over at site 1 know how to reach 192.168, which is site 2, and vice versa. We need to make sure that all the devices over at site 2 know how to reach the 172.16 address space at site 1. The second thing we're also going to want to do is forward. We're going to want to forward that traffic so that if somebody at site 1 needs to reach a server at site 2, when they send the packet into our service provider network, we need to do that forwarding of traffic. Now, the actual word switching, we usually reserve that for layer 2 functionality inside of a switch, like a layer 2 switch. But we could also loosely use that as the action item or the action word to represent the process a router is taking as it's forwarding a packet along a path. So depending on who you're talking to or what the context is, these 3 words could be referring to similar functionality. But regardless, as a service provider, we are responsible to our paying customer to provide that functionality between site 1 and site 2. So let's take the next logical step together. Let's say that we do so well with customer A, and our marketing team is doing such a good job of advertising our services that we are starting to get more and more customers that want to use our services. So let's bring in another customer. Let's say we're going to use customer B. And customer B has 2 sites. You'll never guess what those sites are. You got it. Site 1 and site 2. And they've got a router at each of their locations. And we establish some connectivity to their routers, connecting to our service provider network. And let's say customer B is using the 10.1.0.0 address space at site 1. They're using 10.2.0.0/16 over at site 2. And we would need to provide the same types of services for that customer, customer B. The advertising of the 10.1 and 10.2 respectively back and forth. The actual forwarding or switching of the packets between those 2 sites. The other thing that we need to address is what if customer B wants to start using 172.16.0.0/12? Well, the challenge is that address space right there is already in use by customer A, but it is an RFC 1918 address. Customer B is totally within their rights to use that address space, and as a service provider, you and I have to keep this 172.16 address space separate from this 172.16 address space. And here's why. If we have Bob over here at customer B site 2, and he sends a packet to 172.16.0.50, that traffic, that transit traffic, needs to be forwarded over to site 1 of customer B, not to that IP address at site 1 of customer A. So somehow we need to keep that routing information private for each of our customers, so that the results will be customer A will only share routes with other customer A sites, or at least the ones they want to share with, and customer B will only share with other customer B sites. And that brings me to the focal point of this video. Why do we love MPLS, multi-protocol label switching? Why do we use it? Why do we love it? And it's because of the service. Have you ever gone to a restaurant or some other establishment and the service has been so phenomenal, you just can't get over it? You're going to go back, you're going to tell your friends. Well, it's the service or services that MPLS applications provide for us. That's the reason we use it. And one of those MPLS services that we could use for this scenario right here is called MPLS Layer 3 Virtual Private Networks. Now, by using a service like MPLS Layer 3 VPNs for our service provider network, we could do several things. We could keep all of the routing separate between customer A and customer B. We don't want them mingling or sharing each other's networks and routes. By keeping all of the routing separate or private from each other, then when Bob sends a packet to 172.16 something, it'll be going over to site 1 of customer B and not site 1 of customer A.